Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday morning edition of Inside the Firm. I'm your host, Alex Gore, and I'm here with a special guest, at least for me. It's Jordan Shipman. He is the owner of the Jiu-Jitsu gym that I go to in Longmont. So we're going to talk about Jiu-Jitsu and business and opening. Would you classify it as a franchise? Is that the...
Well, one, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here. This is cool. So full disclosure, so I'm not actually the owner of Easton Longmont. I'm the general manager.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I would classify it as a franchise. The way that Easton is set up, I guess from a corporate structure perspective, is there's the main owners, which is Amal Easton. You know, his name's on the door. Elliot Marshall, yep. And Mike Tusignant is also a partial owner in that specific school. And then
is Mike a trainer also?
So
or is
Mike
he
Tusignant is an Easton black belt, and he's actually CEO of Easton. Right. And then so I report directly to him.
Yep.
But he's not at the academy, like very much at all.
Gotcha.
So it definitely is. They've set it up to where, I'm invested in its success. So there's like it feels like it's my baby.
Yeah.
So I'm not like an owner, but I have ownership of it.
Right.
A lot of autonomy.
Right. And there are those technicalities, but I bet everyone at the gym just thinks that this is basically your gym.
Absolutely. And that's the way it goes for like every Easton Academy is you've got your general manager, and that's who everybody looks to as this is their school.
Yeah. And we'll go back to that, but maybe just talk about, you started jiu-jitsu early and then you had a break and you came back to it. Is that correct?
Well, I started martial arts early as a kid.
Yeah.
And then it was Taekwondo. And then I had a long break where I, just did lots of other things in life. But it was always in the back of my mind to come back to it. And then it was, something I always wanted to get back into. And then it was like I turned 30.
Yep.
And I was like, uh-oh.
Time's a ticking.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not getting any younger. So if you want to do this, you should get back into it.
What made you want to get back into it?
Well, funny enough, it's when I was a kid, I always wanted a couple of things. When I was a kid, I always wanted a black belt, and I actually stopped doing martial arts right before I got my black belt in Taekwondo. Like it was one belt away. Mm-hmm. My parents got a divorce, and we moved, and just didn't get back into it. Life just changed a lot. Yeah. So that was always in the back of my mind, but as a kid, there were a lot of skills that I gained from martial arts that helped me in my life. Like this is a story I actually tell the kids class now because we're talking about focus this week. So I tell them this story about how when I was a kid, I always had problems daydreaming, like I couldn't focus or stay on task.
You're looking at one right now to this
right,
day.
I still have that problem, right?
Yeah.
And even before I got back into jiu-jitsu, I felt like I had that problem. But as a kid, I was always like put in the front of the class so the teacher could like call me out when they would see me daydreaming and not paying attention. I mean, they would give us an assignment. Everybody would go to work, and I'd just be off in space for like 10, 15 minutes without realizing it.
Yep.
And I remember that I was always the last one done. I was always behind on everything. And, almost started to think that I wasn't as smart as some of the other kids. But it was really just my ability to focus wasn't there. And through martial arts, through Taekwondo, like really having to focus, I gained that skill outside of the dojo. And within a year of doing martial arts, I started becoming like the first one to finish all my work. And then I started to believe I was actually just as intelligent as anybody else because I was finishing my work first. And the teachers were no longer singling me out and putting me in the front of the room. Like it didn't matter where I was. And so just kind of having that memory of how martial arts was able to improve my life outside of off the mats, it was something that I was craving at that time in my life because up until, through my later half of my 20s, I became quite sedentary, and I really started to struggle with, depression and getting stressed. And, I had a couple of mental breakdowns, just resulted in me being locked in a room for like days at a time and just couldn't stop crying, couldn't do something as simple as like answer my emails. And, I just didn't want that to happen anymore.
Yeah.
So I turned to a couple of things. I was kind of afraid to get back into martial arts. I was kind of afraid to have that white belt mentality again. So I spent a year bodybuilding before I had the confidence to get back into martial arts. And I remember I did my first powerlifting meet. And after I did that, that was kind of like my marker of like, okay, well, what's next? And I talked to a friend of mine and I asked him, I was like, so what's like, I knew he was into martial arts and MMA and stuff like that. And I asked him, I was like, well, what's the most practical martial art for self-defense? And he said, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I said, okay. So I looked up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and at the time I lived in Boulder, and Easton Boulder was like 10 minutes down the street. I didn't have a car at the time. So I was like, all right, this is perfect. I can ride my bike there. And the rest is history.
Yeah. How old were you when you did that change, when you started Taekwondo? What grade were you in about?
Oh, I was probably, I want to say it was 3rd or 4th grade.
Okay. Oh,
somewhere around there.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, because I feel like I had a similar thing, but I'll tell a middle school story. Mm-hmm. We had to do this packet for English class. Every day you got a new packet and you did it. One day I didn't finish the packet. I don't know why, I just didn't. But every other day I did. And I turned it in. I was expecting, like, Alex, what are you doing? Stay later, or make sure you have, take it home with you and get done by the next day. Nothing. So then the next day I'm like, let me test this. Daydreamed, didn't do anything. Didn't turn in my packet in time. Nothing. The rest of the semester, I maybe did like 4 packets where, you're doing 1 a day. And you talk about focus, and it's interesting because on the daydream, like, sometimes you can focus for multiple days on a similar daydream. So you have that ability, but it's not applied to school. But when you take a martial art, that feedback loop of learning, and that's probably what the skill that gives a lot of people is. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been choked out recently, but it's plenty.
Right. You can't lose focus.
Yeah.
You're forced to be in the moment.
Yep. And then also like the minor adjustments, like I'll know, like, oh, I'm getting caught in this, but hey, if I try it slightly different, will I not get caught? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. So I think that's interesting. And I'll tell a story. My first time in jiu-jitsu, it was Jocko told me to do it. So he's like, and I finally said, okay, I have enough cash, I can pay for this. And I was 34 because this was December, and I show up to Boulder, and they say, hey, have you done an intro class? And I was like, no. Like, okay, we'll put you with one of the good guys. And we did hip tosses. And I got done with that. We did other things too, but all I remember is hip tosses. I go, I'm 34 and I never knew I could do this. This is magic. Like, how did I go this long without knowing how to throw someone over my body? Like, and it was just crazy to me that, because when they were showing me, they go, see, once I get you on, like, they were using me on their back, like, you can't do anything, on the hip, like, I can just toss you over. I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. So that magic was awesome. And then I didn't realize how fun it would be. Like, I thought it was going to be kind of like the army, like it's a workout, it's not that fun. But every time, like, I couldn't wait to go back. I was doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, like, I had to get work stuff done. You can see, and work has gotten kind of crazy, but it was so fun that every Friday I was like, I can't believe I'm missing class. Like, yeah. And I didn't know that was going to be a ramification. And then after a while, after they realized that, like, because I was in shape and I wasn't just I was a white belt and still am a white belt, but I think it was my first stripe, or that actually took a while. But the guys knew me, and then they started to actually, like, go a little harder. Mm-hmm. And then I started feeling their strength, and I go, oh. And then I knew what they were doing. And, some of the guys, I go, I know what's going to happen, and there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing in the world I can do about it. And I took that to the realization, like, I don't think people realize that there's people walking down the street. You look like a normal guy. Anyone close to your size, like, that isn't trained, like, there would be nothing he could do. And they don't realize that, like, it's another, like, oh, there's even more magic. There's even more magic. And that's not even, none of those points I don't think were underlying your point of the focus, the dedication, the feedback loop. But did you get that magic, or is that just me?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very normal part of the journey. Like, that was, I think as you spend more time in martial arts and you spend specifically jiu-jitsu, I think what it means to you and what you get from it evolves over time. But I did have that realization. I mean, like I said, I came into jiu-jitsu, a little bit bigger than I am now, but prior to lifting all those weights, I was about 20 pounds lighter. And, going into jiu-jitsu, I wanted to feel like I was strong, like that I could kick somebody's ass if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But very quickly, I found people who were 20, 30, 40 pounds lighter than me could tie me up in knots against my will. And like you said, there was nothing I could do. And I had that same realization where this guy who was smaller than me that I had seen at a coffee shop over and over again, I had no idea that he was this badass jiu-jitsu guy. And when I went to do my first class, he was my orientation instructor. And I was like, oh, no shit. I know you from Vic's Coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you served me coffee. It was like, you can kill me
if
you wanted to. I had no idea. I thought I was bigger than you, and I thought I could, like, handle myself. But absolutely. And then when I started, I thought I was just going to do it like 2 times a week or something like that. And I got bit by the bug immediately, and I was going to as many classes as I possibly could. And when you first start, at least under the Easton system, they keep you in fundamentals for a little bit. At our academy, we did it a little bit differently because we were smaller, so we kind of were allowed people to accelerate their immersion into training a little sooner rather than later, because we can kind of make sure that everybody stays safe. But Easton Boulder has so many students, they have to have a policy in place so they can make sure that they protect the community and protect people who are coming in for the first time. And you're stuck in fundamentals, so I was like finding every fundamentals class on the schedule that I could possibly go to. I was going to the 6 a.m. class, and then I'd go to work, and then I'd get off work, and then I'd go to the 5:30 class, and I would just do as many as I possibly could until, I could start training, and then I kind of switched it up. But that magic it's real. It's there for everybody, for sure. And I love seeing that spark happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of martial arts that are very, very useful. And kickboxing is probably, boxing or kickboxing is probably the other one people are choosing between. If you could do both, obviously, do both. And the thing that I kind of realize now why other people like Cayko and Joe and whoever said it to you, why do jiu-jitsu first, is if you can get past that first punch and grab them, then all of a sudden that magic that we talked about, if you know what you're doing, like, oh, there's nothing they can do now.
Right.
What are they going to do with their arms tied up and then taken to the ground? There's, and then you could still punch and be in position.
Right.
An elbow,
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, a striking art really depends on being on your feet to be able to generate the power that is required for a knockout. And when you take somebody to the ground, you remove that power. They don't have the ability to drive off their feet and get their hips into a punch or a kick that generates that knockout power. There's some ground and pound positions that you can generate a lot of power in, but there's a lot of articles out there. But that adage that 80% of the fights go to the ground and stay there, it's true. It happens.
Yeah. I have a selfish question.
Sure.
You teach children, right?
I do.
I have it, actually. So he's almost 4.
Awesome.
He's super shy.
Yeah.
Do you get those kids because like he'll see me watching the UFC and he'll go, Dad, let's fake fight. And he does all this
awesome
stuff. And then I was actually trying to show him something, a Chimera, because he actually did it to the baby.
Oh, really?
But just by himself, I was like, you can't do that. The baby's going to cry. It was just the way they were tangled up, and he just started doing it. I was like, no.
Yeah, right.
But he's super, super shy, and he will only like listen in this area for a little bit, and then he'll want to do something else. Do you get those kids? How do you deal with them? When do you start them off?
Yeah, so we actually give them a shot at 3.5. Like we let them try like our little Tigers class. And, jiu-jitsu at that age is very much disguised as play. It's they learn techniques, but it's through games, and they don't realize they're learning jiu-jitsu. Like there's a game we call Crazy Horse, where it just means getting on the instructor's back and getting your seatbelt grip and getting your hooks in and trying to stay on that instructor's back as he like spins around and tries to throw you off. Yeah. That's a game to them, but what they're learning is how to control the back, is how to stay on. And it just depends.
We should play that game. That'd be hilarious.
Oh, it's a good one. I still do it with some of the kids, especially like the ones who are more timid, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you can break through a little bit of that barrier, is you disguise it as play, right? Because even kids who are shy want to play. But we just give it a shot, and if they can, follow instructions and stay on the mat without running off and crying or something like that, they can do the class. And I've seen kids where they come to the first class and, they can't look the instructor in the eye, and we just tell the parents like, well, you know what, just bring them back. Just bring them back tomorrow, and let's just give it another shot. And I've seen students come back, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before they can actually like look the instructor in the eye and take instructions and say yes sir, no sir, and start to do it. So the way we deal with it is just through small steps. Just let them kind of warm up and get to know the instructor, and that's usually what it is with the shy kids, is they just need some rapport and they need to get to know you a little bit, because your kid isn't shy with you, right? Because he loves dad. He knows dad. He's safe with dad. There's no reason to be scared or shy. And so it's just kind of like that process, getting to know them a little bit. And then eventually through the class, through interacting with other kids and roughhousing with the other kids and doing jiu-jitsu, like that confidence really starts to build, because there's no reason to be afraid of, this other kid or this other person, because I know I have what it takes. I can take what this person can dish out.
Yeah. I saw in Vegas, I went and just did a class, and the kids were before, so while I was waiting on the sidelines, it was probably like 5 to 12-year-olds. And it was just so hilarious and fun to watch, because they were, sparring and doing some moves. And this one kid was like super lazy. So the other kid was doing stuff on him, and then he'd go down and whisper something. And I don't know if it was trash talk or not, but I feel like it was. It was
That's
so
awesome.
Funny.
Yeah, some of the kids get really good at talking trash like early on, because they're hanging out with the adults, and we like to talk trash on the mats, and it's hilarious how quick they pick it up. It's pretty good. But yeah, you always have that full spectrum of kids. You have some that are, the parents are putting them there because they need to work on their behavior and discipline and stuff like that, but they're not really like into jiu-jitsu that much, but sometimes they come around. I heard a story about a student down at our Centennial location, and it was 10 years of being in their program down there before all of a sudden this student just flipped their mindset. They just went from not being very competitive or driven or into it, and then just over time just completely switched. And now the student's like an assistant coach for some of the other kids' classes and is really connecting with the other kids and making a positive impact. And so it's just cool to see that how jiu-jitsu can work on everybody, even at the kids.
Yep. So in jiu-jitsu, I'm going to ask you a question, and I might frame it wrong. So feel free to reframe it. But there's obviously techniques. There's strategies, game plan. And then there's, philosophies almost, or just like, thinking about having base, thinking about leverage, things like that. Of those three, or how do you parse out jiu-jitsu? Do you compartmentalize them? They all blend together too, but, do you kind of have a philosophy that kind of spans from, put your hand this way to, always, that's also linking to leverage or stuff like that. I guess I'm mainly just asking, how do you think of jiu-jitsu when you're trying to teach it and bring a class along?
It's an interesting question. Well, I think I would start by saying that, one, jiu-jitsu is very vast. It's a very vast martial art. Like there's a lot that goes into it. I try to always impart as much conceptual thinking behind what I'm teaching as I am capable of doing, to the extent of my knowledge. And I really try to, if I could sum it up in one way, I really try and help students understand how to connect the dots. And then I see a parallel with life there, right? So like the process of learning jiu-jitsu, like you've got your 4 basic positions, right? And at the top of the hierarchy is the back. You're on someone's back. And then next is you have someone in mount. And then from there you have someone in side control. And then underneath that is you have someone in your guard, right? And then if you keep going down the ladder, it's you're in someone else's guard. You're underneath someone in side control. Someone has you in mount. Someone's on your back, right? And so I would say conceptually, like jiu-jitsu is about trying to ascend that hierarchy of positions, right? So if you're in a bad position, you're trying to change your position to a better one, right? Moving up that ladder. Now, between those basic positions are an ever-increasing amount of techniques. Like jiu-jitsu is very much a river that's constantly flowing and constantly changing and always evolving, and there's always new layers and new techniques and new details and new artists that are just always adding to this canon. Like it's no one person can ever know it all. And because no one person can ever know it all, like it really is this process of going out and exploring, seeking knowledge, and then picking what you like picking what you favor, what works for you, and then learning how to connect the dots. And really, I like to see techniques as bridges between those main positions, right? Like if I get a Kimura from side control, it's not just a submission that's available to me from side control, but it's also a bridge to get elsewhere, depending on what my training partner does. I can take the back off of it. I can spin into other positions. And that is the process of learning jiu-jitsu, of building your game, right? Like you pick what works for you. You explore a lot of different techniques that allow you to progress up that hierarchy. And that ultimately becomes your game. And there's lots of similar styles and lots of similar games, but each person that practices jiu-jitsu, they're going to have their own individual, unique expression of the art, based on who they are, their perspectives, their body type, their brain, their shape and size. And I feel like that's very much like life, right? Like I think it's each of our personal responsibilities to say, create a life work that we find fulfilling, right? To carve out a path in life. And I feel like the process of carving out that path or a life's work or a purpose, whatever word you want to use to describe it, really is about connecting the dots. It's about going out there and seeking knowledge and finding what works for you, whether it's, through extracurricular activities in high school or, what you study in college or what you choose to study, while you're working. But you find all these different things and you start to connect the dots and you kind of come up with your own game for life.
Yeah.
And so I see, for me, like the way I approach my life and, especially with a lot of the reading I do where I try and read really widely and pick all these different things, and it helps me have this more accurate interpretation of reality and helps me become more skilled at dealing with life and interpreting reality. I see jiu-jitsu very much the same way. You learn all these different techniques and you find ways to connect the dots, but you're also looking at things from all these different angles. And you start to understand things more and more. Like you learn a Kimura from one position, you understand a little bit about Kimuras. You learn a Kimura from another position. Well, now you've just compounded your knowledge, right? You are more able to accurately interpret reality and interpret what's going on in that situation.
Yeah.
Did any of that just make sense?
No, it was perfect. and I want to go back to how that relates to life. And not only do you know a Kimura or rear naked choke, but then you're growing in your execution of it. So when Patricio would like demonstrate, like back in the day, his choke was way better than whoever then I just trained with later. And it's just knowing your body movement, knowing just everything about it. So I really liked how you state, there's 4 main positions, and then the transitions lead to submissions, or and the techniques work in between those. I wish, and if you should tell me, I wish there was 4 main positions in life, because a lot of people do the similar things. They take all these different books, they take all these different leaders, these lessons, these different people, and they combine them. And that framework of jiu-jitsu, of those positions, can kind of help you make a scaffolding of which you could build on. Do you have, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, because I don't know, are there 4 main positions of of life where you scaffold on these other things? Right. Let's find it. Let's tell the people.
Right? I don't know. I mean, depending on who you ask, I think that those things change a little bit, but I think there's probably a commonality between them all. I mean, I've read a lot of self-help, self-improvement books, and they're all, describing their own variation of the same thing. Like they're 4 main positions, and they usually, it seems like the authors or whoever will usually describe these things as like a foundation, right? And then out of that foundation, like you said, it's everything is built on top of that. I think that for a lot of people, spirituality is like a main position or a main circle of life. I think that community is important. I think your physical health is important. Financial health is important. Like, you have to have your basic needs covered. There's a lot of different expressions of it that I've come across over the time. But I mean, for me, it's making sure I have those basic needs covered. Making sure that I'm, I like to have some sort of spiritual practice. Like, I'm not religious. I like the interpretation of spirituality is finding stillness or being present in the present moment. So I've been meditating a lot over the last year or so. That's important to me. And just that ability to detach from life and kind of watch it like a movie rather being immersed in it, treat things like a simulation. I find that that's really useful. And I have my own routines. I try to read every morning, meditate every morning, journal every morning, get my thoughts out. So, 4 main positions, I'm not really sure.
Right.
But I feel like everybody's got to find like their foundation that's going to put them on an upward spiral.
Yep.
And I feel like when your foundation is out of whack, that's when you end up on a downward spiral.
Yeah. And I would say if you do find those for yourselves, whether it's, your family, community, your life, your business, and then, a spirituality. Right. The key that I found, one of our principles, we have 9 principles, F9 Productions. And one of them is to reduce your feedback loop, right? Which is what jiu-jitsu does, because if you get armbarred in a second, and all that. But in your life, it's different. You don't have that unless you think about it or apply it in a certain way. So we'll do it a bunch of different ways in our business. But in life, kind of the things that you talked about, journaling might be one, where you get to actually put down, read, and reflect. There's multiple ways to do it, but I think that's one of the keys of success of jiu-jitsu and other martial arts, that it's harder to do in life, because you could take an idea from a book and apply it to one of your 4 whatever, but unless you have a feedback loop that's obvious, you will not know whether it's leading you in the right direction or the wrong direction. Right.
That I'm really glad you said that. Light bulb in my mind. I think that's what I find most valuable about jiu-jitsu these days, is because I see it as a vehicle for personal growth. And I'm finding that what brings you success in jiu-jitsu also brings you success in life. And so whereas in life, there are times where I might not have that immediate feedback loop, to provide me, I can think about what is the parallel in jiu-jitsu, right? Where I do have the immediate feedback loop. And just through my own experiences, I've seen enough connections and parallels to where even if I don't necessarily have the immediate feedback and loop in life, I have confidence and trust that this is the way it works in jiu-jitsu. Yep. So it must be the way it works in life as well. So yeah. I think that's really cool. That's actually been an idea I've been chewing up for a long time.
Yeah. Awesome. That kind of leads right into business. And one of the things I was impressed with Easton was they seem to have their stuff together. And it was actually, it was actually surprising. And I should have known this because when we started out our firm, we were young and we would ask feedback. Why did you choose us? And they said, you were, professional, on time, and you over-delivered. And we said, oh, isn't that normal? And they said, no. So if you deal with a lot of different areas, you realize that those aren't normal. And I actually kind of want to talk about the systems. And how I found out about this was I don't know how it came about, but they said, oh, we can't promote you. And I think that it was two people talking. It wasn't anything negative. They go, there's a block on your account. You don't have a picture. You didn't have a picture in this is when I was going down to Boulder.
Right.
And then oh, okay, sorry, I'll stand, take a picture, whatever. And it made me think they must have some sort of tracking system to show how much you come. They must have an alert maybe if you don't pay, which I'm like, I think that's awesome. That's great. So could you just talk, because you went from just a student,
yes, to
then a GM.
Right.
Did those, and another thing I noticed too, you asked if anyone wanted to become a coach or a teacher or something like that. And then you said, let me know because we'll sign you up or put you in, some other program.
Yeah.
So there's layers to this Easton onion.
Yeah.
What are some of those unique or cool layers that you saw when you went from practitioner now to GM that you feel are useful and basically to the general public too, because there's a lot of business owners listen to this. And are my assumptions correct that there is this deeper system?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's an ongoing thing, where Easton's come a long way from Amal Easton being the only person teaching out of a dance academy.
Yep.
With 30 students, and at one point he was sleeping in a closet, and it's just been this ongoing process of figuring things out, through trial and error, paying attention to the feedback loops and just improving, just like martial arts. So let's see, that question's pretty broad. I would say the number one thing that I've learned working with Easton is the focus on the community, and then everything else is a byproduct of that, right? Like all of the systems are important, but at the core is relationships, right? It's the application of systems across relationships, focusing on the community. Like we don't build a system for money. We build a system to make sure that people have a good experience, and then that we can pull them into the culture and we can pull them into the community. And we focus on caring about people, and everything else is a byproduct of that. And if that one piece is missing, then all of the other systems are just gimmicks. They're just ways to funnel people in, try and get their money. But that's not what it's about. But yeah, we have systems across the board, and we have different departments. And at our scale, at Easton Longmont scale, because it's a very new academy, I'm wearing a lot of those hats. But at a bigger scale, eventually there's a department head for the striking side of things for the Muay Thai, and then there's a separate department head for the kids program, and then there's a separate department head for Jiu-Jitsu. And then all of these different departments have their own systems, and then the front desk has its own system. Like we call them first impression specialists. And that's a core component of what we do. And so like your experience, you get so many people. Like the human brain is only capable of managing so many connections, right? And so when your focus is on community and you have to maintain those connections with people, like you need a system to be able to scale those connections, right? And so what you experienced was, that was a piece of our CRM, our client relationship management system, right? And the one we use is MindBody. Full disclosure, it's not my favorite, but it's the one that has all the features that we need for tracking students' progress through martial arts. But we try to get everybody's picture, and every time we communicate with a student or a student has an experience of note in the academy, we set a contact log, for everything, so that no matter what or who is coming behind another person in that system, they can see the story of a member's progress. They know everything that they need to know about that member's progress, so they can interact with that person, and make sure that we don't lose that connection. For martial arts, tracking your visits, how long it's been since your last promotion, how many classes you've been to, have you been taking a break for a while? Like, we can see that. Because that's really important, especially when moving from one rank to another. Is there any specifics you want to hone in on?
Well, maybe, but you remind me of something that I was also impressed with. And you just told me how the relationships in the community are important. So then I know that you guys built a system off of that, and the system was, after my first week, I got a text, and it might have been I don't even remember who it was from. How's it going? How did you like your class? Right. Went great. Then it was like a month later. Yeah. Hey, is everything working out? Yes, having a great time. But, and I just thought that was awesome, because I think a lot of people are expecting, maybe this is like, oh, I'm going into a gym, I'm going to learn some stuff, but it's probably going to be a knucklehead, right? And that's just going to be it, you know, but it's not. So maybe it's just a kudos to the Easton system, and it's the only one I know. But it's well done. It's ongoing, of course, and it's evolving. But
I appreciate that. Yeah. I think most people are used to, we'll call it, for lack of a better word, like your traditional gym model, like a Planet Fitness model or something like that, where really how their model works is, they sell as many memberships as they can, and then they kind of depend on not everybody showing up at the same time, and then kind of pricing their membership to where it's low enough to where they just kind of forget about it and like don't show up to the gym, but they don't really care about their money coming out of the account. We're the exact opposite. Like, we want everybody that signs up with us in the academy, right? And what we found is, the biggest drop-off point are those initial stages in jiu-jitsu. Not everybody's cut from the same piece of cloth. I see some students come in and they're willing to be thrown into the fire right away, and they thrive on it. You throw them into the deep end of the pool, and they figure out how to swim, and they like it that way. Well, sometimes you throw people into the deep end of the pool and they drown. And so you need a different process. And that's what that's about. So what you just referred to, it's what we call our 246 FollowUp. And so anytime we sign up a new member, is we set those contact logs, and we set reminders to check in with those people. And it's authentic. Like, we really do care about your journey. We really want to want to know how it's going, because we know what a positive impact jiu-jitsu can have on a person's life. And we want to do everything we can to keep you there, so we can make sure that we have the opportunity to share this martial art with you that can have a positive impact on your life. And so, it's very systematic, but there's a specific purpose there. It's to keep you there as long as possible. And it's not about money. It's about sharing a positive impact.
Yeah. And if anyone's listening to this and thinking about doing it, and I can understand how you might be nervous, because it's a physical sport, right? But everyone that's now a purple, brown, or black belt, they didn't walk in the door like that.
Right. We had to go through it.
Right. So when you start out, your first training partners, you line up, the higher ranked people circle back down to the lower ranked people, and they remember what it was like when they didn't know anything, and we're just, so the friendliness and the openness is all there. So I think if you had that in your mind, you should get it away. And if you realize, you might say, well, I don't know anything. I would do some online stuff before because I don't want to be totally stupid.
Right.
But still, that's different. Like it doesn't translate. You have to be in there, And if you have a question, you probably see me all the time. Daniel, what did you just do to River? Show me.
Right. Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, I did. I took his legs out.
Absolutely.
So
that's the way it works. Like more people should see life that way. Right. Like, I think that, I don't think anybody in life got to where they were without standing on someone's shoulders. Right. Like, even if you have the impression that you're completely self-made, there was already millions of people who lived before you that produced all this infrastructure and everything in your environment that you are a byproduct of. Right. And in martial arts, it's the same way. And I think that's why we put such a big emphasis on our lineage, like where we came from, because we never want to forget that, the people before us who paved the way. And that's really important in martial arts. And it's an important aspect of our culture that the senior students work with the junior students, because just like you said, those senior students had someone else helping them in the beginning to lift them up. And I see a lot of new students like come into the class for the first time and they're really worried about being a burden. It's like, I don't know anything. Like I'm so bad at this. Like my partner's going to be so frustrated with me because, I stink at it. Right.
Real feeling.
Right. Yeah. And, I have seen some people like that. And, I feel bad for anyone who has had that experience, but they get pushed out of our culture in particular very quick. There was actually a student.
If they, not the one that feels like a burden, if someone's treating them like a burden.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. I mean, there was actually, we had a visiting student who was a higher belt before we closed for COVID. And I don't know if you met this guy, but there's actually a gentleman who trains at our academy. He hasn't come back yet because he's at risk, but he's 75 years old. And he's doing jiu-jitsu. And so whenever there's a senior student partnered with him, it requires a lot of care and patience, because that man is sincerely doing his best, but he's 75. He's just not going to pick it up as quick as a 20-year-old, right? And so we had this visiting student come check out our academy, and, he was a higher ranked belt. And so the instructor of that class didn't realize he was a visitor. Shouldn't matter. Paired him with that older gentleman, and he was a dick. Yeah. He was a jerk, and like I saw it, the other people in the class saw it, and like within minutes I was just getting complaints about this guy. Yeah. And when it came time for him to sign up, I just told him, man, I don't think you're going to be a good fit here. Yeah. I was like, the kind of culture that we're committed to building here is, everybody can train with everybody, and we lift each other up, and we are committed to that. And, you seem to get really frustrated with the fact that you had to help someone, and I don't think this is going to work out. Yeah. And there's a talk I like to give a lot in my classes because it's important to hear. And I say, it takes 3 people to be the best you can be. It takes someone who can teach you. It takes someone who can challenge you. And then you need someone that you can teach. Right. And it's this constant circle. And I mean, I feel like this is how everybody progresses in life, is by building and contributing and lifting somebody up. And then that person builds and contributes and lifts somebody up. And then it goes onward and upward. And that's very much present in martial arts. It does not work without that. And, I see that as the highest calling to live your life as well.
Yep. I think that's one answer of the feedback loop in life that we're talking about in business is someone can teach you from a book, or someone that's higher up in business, someone that can challenge you. It might be another owner at another gym somewhere else, and then someone you can teach, someone that you are shepherding to take over some of those roles once
that's
you
a
expand.
Good point. Right, exactly.
That's a great feedback loop right there. If you cement that as part of your system, and I think I might yeah, I think in some ways it happens naturally, but it always works better if you have a system to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think we'll end on that note, but I'll let you have the last word.
Was that it?
That was it.
That was so fast.
Yeah, 45 minutes.
Oh, wow. Goodness. That was like 5 minutes. Awesome, dude. We keep going.
So if you want to say anything else to leave them with, or if you want to let them, if they're in the Colorado area, how to get a hold of Easton or what to do there, you can wrap it up.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. If anybody's in the area, we would be honored to have you visit our academy. Anyone who walks through our doors is a gift in my mind, at least at first. Most of them work out.
Then we'll see.
Those are rare exceptions, but we'd be honored to have you. We have 8 different academies throughout Colorado, so just depending on where you're at, there's typically an Easton somewhere, or maybe even one of our affiliates or sister schools. The one that you train at is Easton Longmont. And if you want to check us out, you can go to eastonbjj.com, and all of the information is on our website.
Perfect. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.